He used to be the guy who erased mistakes with his arm and his feet, the quarterback you trusted to make the impossible look like habit. Sunday night, under the harsh lights of Arrowhead and the cold math of late-season pressure, the script flipped. The Chiefs didn't find that magic. Houston did. The Texans stole a 2010 win. Patrick Mahomes was picked off 3 times, and Kansas City's comfortable lane to January suddenly feels like a narrow trail over a cliff. Reuters, this isn't panic porn. It's reality checking the ledger. 2 late failed fourth down gambles, a few plays that didn't land, and those 3 interceptions add up fast in the postseason calculus. The numbers don't lie. 1 loss snowballs into smaller margins and fewer safety nets. Enter the projections. What looked like a reasonable path a week ago is now cobbled with what-ifs. Models that had given KC a respectable shot now peg their playoff chances in the low teens. That's not just a dip, it's a seismic shift for a franchise that hasn't missed the postseason in over a decade. MarcoNews.com. Look up and down the conference map and you see why the fallout matters. Denver sits atop the AFC with authority. New England quietly hums at the top of its division. The Jaguars and Bills are clumped near the top seeds. Every misstep matters when the field is this tight. Winning out is no longer a small, neat equation for the Chiefs. It's a chain of perfect results and favorable bounces elsewhere. The room for error evaporates. Teams that used to rely on late-game heroics now have to worry the late-game heroics won't come. NFL.com, there's a human story in all this. Mahomes still makes jaw-dropping plays, and Andy Reid is still Andy Reid. But the offensive line injuries, the timing issues, the drops and the tipped passes, those things that once felt like temporary glitches are now showing up at the worst possible time. And when the margin for error is that thin, turnovers don't just lose you a drive, they lose you the narrative. They hand the other team the momentum, the scoreboard, and in many cases, the psychological edge that decides late games. Houston took it, cleanly, opportunistically, and without apology, and the scoreboard reflected the difference. What makes this week feel brutal for Kansas City fans is history. This franchise has built an expectation. When things go sideways, Mahomes finds a way. That expectation has been a comfort blanket for a long time, but comfort blankets wear thin when punishment is consistent. Win probability models and projections are blunt tools, but they're also honest ones. When you're dipping into the low double digits for a playoff berth, you're suddenly looking at scenarios where you need help from teams you don't control. That forces a different mindset. Not just fix it, but fix everything immediately. MarcoNews.com. Meanwhile, what Houston did matters beyond a single upset. The Texans' defense delivered an evening of takeaways and discipline, and C.J. Stroud's ability to capitalize turns this into more than a lucky night. It becomes a statement. Winning at Arrowhead, knocking off pattern of success, and turning the tide of a division race, that's the kind of result that reshapes narratives. Odds that once favored Kansas City now tilt toward a different division map, and Houston's ascent into the playoff conversation is suddenly less a rumor and more a plan executed on Sunday. SI, meanwhile, the AFC picture is crowded at the top. Denver and New England are jockeying for position. Buffalo, Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, each result elsewhere matters for Kansas City. In a sane world, you can still craft a path, win the rest, hope for a stumble, and lean on tiebreakers. In the reality of Week 14, that path is fragile and narrow. If the Chiefs don't answer quickly, with clarity and urgency, their season flips from salvageable to survival. The coming weeks won't be about lesson learning in tape rooms. They'll be about execution in hostile environments and minimizing errors when the lights are hottest. NFL.com. There's also another column that's suddenly heavier. The Colts' misfortune. Indianapolis lost Daniel Jones to a torn Achilles in Week 14, an injury that not only alters the Colts' season but shifts other teams' equations for wild card positioning and scheduling. Injuries like that ripple through the playoff projections because they can change opponents' strengths and weaken expected matchups. Every roster shakeup nudges the probabilities. Every high-profile injury makes other teams' windows wider or narrower. The league is an ecosystem. One team's tragedy is another's tactical reality. Reuters. For fans and insiders, the immediate question is simple. How do the Chiefs respond? Do they get healthy up front? Do the skill guys tighten up? Can coaching adjustments curb the turnovers? The answer isn't dramatic. It's mundane, it's urgent, and it's relentless. Practice detail after practice detail, like fewer high-risk plays when the margin's skinny, and a disciplined film room that turns blame into blueprint. That's the only fix for a team that's been used to rewriting endings with improvisation. Now they need to rewrite the beginning, too. Reuters, there's a larger truth beneath the panic. The NFL is built on thin edges. Dynasties wobble when the little things accumulate. Winning cultures recover because they reinforce processes that make miracles less necessary. If Kansas City is to re-find its groove, it will require two things happening at once: internal correction and external mercy. The former is coachable. The latter is, by definition, out of their hands, which is why every remaining game matters like a playoff final. So, what's the blunt takeaway? The Chiefs are in trouble, but not in exile. They've got a Hall of Fame quarterback, a veteran coach, and resources to fix what's broken. But they can't rely on history alone. This week demands accountability, clarity, and a visible response. Lose another key game, and the comfortable narrative of the Mahomes era becomes a footnote in a season of what-ifs. Watch the next 2 weeks closely. If Kansas City answers, steadying the offensive line, cleaning up turnovers, and getting explosive plays back under control, the season isn't over. If they don't, this loss becomes the hinge point that separates another historic run from an ordinary disappointment. And for a franchise that's been defined by dramatic second halves, the irony wouldn't be lost. Sometimes the thing that built a dynasty is the same thing that can force it to rebuild. What if I told you the NFL's regular season suddenly looks like a high-stakes poker table where Patrick Mahomes just folded a royal flush? Tonight's playoff map is less a neat bracket and more a messy Rorschach test. Teams that felt locked are wobbling, contenders are breathing through paper straws, and a handful of clubs that once looked inevitable are suddenly counting cards. Let's walk the room. The NFC still has anchors. The Rams, Packers, Seahawks, and 49ers are all sitting pretty, but nothing is guaranteed. Green Bay's surge keeps them in the driver's seat for the North, and the Rams are doing their usual quietly excellent thing. Meanwhile, the Bears and Eagles trade momentum like Pokemon cards. Either can implode or sprint depending on the next 2 weeks. In short, the NFC looks deep, but it's also fragile. One loss, a weather bomb, or a fluky injury, and the whole seeding house of cards shifts. Flip to the AFC and the drama turns theatrical. Denver and New England look like they brought their own oxygen tanks. Both are stacked and have earned their perch, but it's the chase behind them that reads like a thriller. Jacksonville and Buffalo are clinging to top-tier spots. The Chargers and Texans are circling comfortably in wildcard territory, and the Colts and Ravens are scrapping for relevance. Then there's Kansas City. A team that's been playoff kryptonite for opponents feels suddenly mortal. A loss to Houston didn't just dent their resume, it threatened to sink a decade-plus streak of postseason runs. That's the headline. A dynasty that used to breathe late-game magic now has to wonder whether every remaining snap is an audition. Why does this matter beyond fandom and hot takes? Because playoff math is mean. A loss does more than drop you a slot. It rearranges draft leverage, trade calculus, and offseason narratives. Chiefs at 6-7 suddenly face the possibility of missing the postseason for the first time in a long, long time. For Patrick Mahomes and that whole operation, the pressure doesn't just change games, it changes offseason plans. Do you patch the offensive line harder? Do you chase defensive help in January? Do you trust your coordinator to find creative ways when reps are tight and opponents key on your strengths? Big questions, and the answers cost money, draft picks, and pride. Let's talk about the human stuff, because the standings are numbers, but the story is people. For teams like Pittsburgh, who just wrested first place in the AFC North back from Baltimore, a single win